strategies in order to and prevent us from being hurt like that again. But the interesting thing about it, and I've seen this so many times played out throughout my career in ministering to other folks, is that these self-protective strategies actually delay our healing and recovery rather than promote it. And it's just it's predictable. It really is. It's almost predictable following hurt and betrayal that people are going to fall into one or more of these self-protective strategies. Now, in a previous broadcast, I shared 5 particular self-protective strategies, and you might want to check that out on my channel. You can find that very simply by just going to my coaching YouTube at New Destiny Coaching. And so you can find that on the YouTube channel there. But I wanted to share 5 additional self-protective strategies that we turn to following hurt and betrayal. So let's take a little deeper dive into those. I'll be right back. So we're talking about self-protective strategies. These are the things that we do following hurt or betrayal that we believe are going to keep us from being hurt or betrayed like that again. And really, ironically, what it does is it just drives us further into staying stuck rather than finding a way forward. And so I want to take a look at some of these 5 additional ones that we're talking about here. And so let me bring those up. So I'm calling this laying aside your suit of armor, because that's really what it's all about. It's protecting it's what we're doing when we are turning to self-protective strategies is that we are seeking to protect our vulnerability. Now, instead of doing that in healthy ways, that we do that in unhealthy ways or unhelpful ways, might be another way of putting that. And so we have 5 here that we want to take a look at. And one of those is overgeneralization. Once we've been hurt by someone, you might generalize the betrayal to all relationships, concluding that all friends or loved ones are untrustworthy. And so we can become suspicious of everyone in our lives as a result of that. And it's one of the great tragedies. There's a great Bible passage in the book of Romans chapter 12. I believe it's verse number 21. It says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And people misunderstand that passage because they think that what it's teaching is to be nice to bad people. But really what it's saying is that when evil has been done to you, the way to overcome that is not to return evil for evil, or even to go into unhealthy strategies, but instead we find our way into genuine healing and growth. And so we overcome evil with good. And one of the ways that one of the things that we need to avoid is overgeneralization, and that's really growing suspicious of all relationships, concluding that all friends or loved ones are going to hurt and betray you. And sometimes what we end up doing is we project, and I've heard this so many times, is that we project our experience to beliefs about all men, all men only want one thing, or that all women, and that all women only want one thing, or even all spiritual leaders, is that. And so we tend to overgeneralize and put all of these folks into a particular category. And that's not going to do us any good. it's going to delay our healing and recovery, and it's also going to cut us off from love. And that's one of the great tragedies of self-protective behaviors, is that ultimately they are selfish because they are self-reliant, and they cut us off from the places where we can get true help, and that's in healthy relationships where we can process the hurt that we have. Another one that is a common response to hurt and betrayal is engaging in risky behaviors. Now, in an attempt to cope with emotional pain, you might turn to substance abuse, whether it's drugs or alcohol, reckless actions like sexuality, or engaging in improper sexual relationships, porn, or even other harmful habits like risk taking and just being reckless, and so on and so forth. Now, while these, and they really do, what is interesting about these things is that they distract you for a while. That's why we get so stuck in those, is that we keep on chasing the high or chasing the experience, is that they distract you for a while, but they only delay your recovery and usually compound the problem. So think about it this way, is when you have been hurt or betrayed, you have one problem. When you turn to risky behaviors, you now have two problems. And not only do you have the need to work through the problems that hurt you in the first place, but secondly, now you've compounded that with other behaviors that are creating problems in your life and relationship. And so we need to be aware of these. At least once we become aware of these, we can detect whether or not that we are turning to these in our own lives. If we're out of denial, typically, it's really hard to get to that space where we step out of denial and into the light, into the truth. But it does at least give us an opportunity to think about how we are dealing with the pain in our life. Another common self-protective behavior is victim mentality. Oh, man, this is just because what happens with victim mentality is that we begin to see ourselves, that life, actually what we begin to see is that life, others, and maybe even God are all arrayed against us, and that leads to learned helplessness, feeling powerless, and blaming others for your circumstance. And here's kind of the interesting thing about blame. It really, and I really kind of spent a long time sorting through that in my own life, is because blame oftentimes is justified because perpetrators bear the responsibility for the wrong that they've done in our lives. But what I have found in working through that in my own life and working with others is that blame is a distraction, because it keeps us, we're always trying to kind of get from the other person some sort of acknowledgement that what they did to us was wrong, and it really keeps us stuck and not moving forward in our own healing, growth, and recovery. So following a betrayal, you may adopt a victim mindset, feeling powerless and blaming others for your circumstances instead of taking proactive steps to heal. I have a great little video that I created, and I borrowed the concept from a Christian psychologist that I've read quite a bit of his resources. But it's called fault and responsibility. And maybe what I'll do is I'll post a link to that in the comment section of this fault and responsibility, because what happens is that we confuse fault. The other person may legitimately be at fault, but we are responsible. We are responsible for our own healing and recovery. And so when we get stuck in the victim mentality, that we just can't see our way forward with working through those things that we need to work through in order to recover. Here's one more. When it comes to these self-protective strategies, and I understand these because I've fallen prey to far too many of them myself. And this one is pessimism. In the aftermath of betrayal, you might develop a negative outlook on life, making it difficult to see any positive aspects or future possibilities. While your pain and loss are undeniable, another reality, God's great ability to redeem pain, is one reality not to overlook. God's great ability to redeem pain. That so much of the Bible contains stories where God has done that, and it's interesting that in those stories is that God doesn't step in right away and fix the problem. That instead, that we are faced with processing those and working through those and learning the lessons, learning actually the good lessons that God has in store for us through those experiences. I'm thinking about Joseph right now, who spent 13 years of his life in horrible situations, but nevertheless, God used those horrible situations to really shape him into a man that God could use in a powerful way. So, Jesus himself said this about life. He says, in this world you will have trouble. So to have an expectation that somehow we're going to escape, he said, by the way, will, not might. He said, you will have trouble. And to have the expectation that we're going to escape some sort of horrible experiences in life is just unrealistic. The fact of the matter is that you will have trouble, I will have trouble, and sure, maybe your trouble is bigger than mine. We could compare loss and hurt and so on and so forth for the longest time. But the fact of the matter is that we need to work through those things and discover that deeper reality, which is the reality of God and his ability to redeem and transform our pain. Oftentimes what we find out is our mess is our biggest message when we are open to allowing God to work in our lives. Finally, that I wanted to mention this whole problem of rumination. This is maddening. Trust me, I know. Rumination keeps you trapped in a cycle of perpetually rehearsing your pain. Constantly thinking about the betrayal can prevent healing, as your energies, it seems as if that our brains can only contain so much information or so much input before they go on overload. And this is exactly the problem with rumination, which is another self-protective strategy, is that we are like a hamster in a cage going on over and over and over and rehearsing the hurt and rehearsing the pain and so on. But while we keep our mind occupied with that hurt, is that we do not find our way forward to healing and recovery. And so what happens is that all of our energies are spent on turning this thing over and over and looking at it a thousand ways from Sunday, of trying to examine it, and that no matter how long you ruminate on it, one of the things that I always like to say is that there's no point in seeking rationality in irrational behavior. And, sin at its very root is irrational, is that it's contrary to reality, and that when we are victims of sin, we just go over and over and over and over and over in our minds, trying to understand why this happened to us. And the better question to ask is, what can I do to move forward? What can I do to heal, grow, and recover? So rumination is one of those traps, those self-protective traps that we can fall into. And so what I would like you to do is connect with us on our various platforms that we have. You can find us online on Facebook at beyondbetrayal.org, and all of our content that we produce ends up in beyondbetrayal.org, or you can find many of our broadcasts on YouTube at New Destiny Coaching. Here's kind of our slogan with Beyond Betrayal, is that life can be good again. Now, I want to just speak to any of you who are stuck in a place where life is just not good. Is that this too shall pass, and life can be good again, particularly when you abandon self-protective strategies and begin seeking a path of true healing, growth, and recovery. And if you want to learn more about how that we can help you with that, I would be more than pleased to visit with you. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you for our next broadcast. Bye-bye.